we have another great speaker, eminent speaker, okay, who is a director of, mind you, Find What's Wrong Limited. So the next topic is going to be cognitive bias in testing, avoiding the pitfalls. So ladies and gentlemen, help me in welcoming Mr. Graham Bob.
Just wait until everybody's gone out. Hear me, everybody? Thumbs up? Can you hear me? Great stuff. I'll try and speak clearly and slowly for the people at the back in particular. That friends of mine that always say that I speak slowly for them, but I'm speaking slowly for you guys. Great to be here. When I left home in Munich a couple of days ago, it was -1 degree and snowing. I can tell you this is the place to be. Absolutely. It's great here. I love it. So, my name's Graham Bath. I'm the working group chair of the specialist working group for ISTQB. And as the name maybe looks, I'm an English guy, but I live in Munich. And I'm a member of the German testing board. So let's get on with it. What I'm going to be talking to you about is something called cognitive bias. It's a fancy sounding name, isn't it? It's basically about the way we think, all right? And what the impact of the way we think has on the way we do our testing. So, we're in a constant process, aren't we, of receiving information, filtering it maybe, thinking, and then acting on the information that we get, okay? It's about this thinking process in the middle here, this diagram. It's about this thinking process that we find certain influences like biases creep in. And cognitive bias is something that interests me very much since I read a book about it on the beach. I don't read thrillers and things. I go on holiday with books about testing and how the mind works and all this sort of stuff. And I got a book one time as a present, and I read this book. It was by a guy called Daniel Kahneman, and he wrote about cognitive bias. And as I started to read this, I thought to myself, this guy's talking about economics and how business managers have taken bad decisions and things like this. And the more I read, the more I started to think, do you know what? There's a lot in there that applies to testing. I started making notes about, how this applies to testing. And this is the result of those notes. So I've added my own experience to that. So it's a tricky thing trying to describe how people think, isn't it? So what helps is to have a bit of a system. And that system of understanding how the mind works is to divide our thinking process into two separate systems. System 1 and System 2. Could have called them A and B, but it's called System 1 and System 2. And it's the interaction of those two systems together that give you the opportunity, let's say, of cognitive bias. So I'm going to describe for you System 1 and System 2, how they work. And then I'm going to give you my, let's say, top 5 cognitive bias hit parade. The things that really trigger for me in the way of how the cognitive bias impacts software testing and management. So let's have a look at System 1 first, shall we? System 1 is our intuition. We all have intuition, don't we? For some of us, it's more than others. But we have now these two systems, System 1, System 2, intuition, System 1, and System 2 is the, if you like, the controller in us. So you have some people that are very intuitive, they take quick decisions. And the system 2 is the logical thinker, the person that, the part of us, let's say, that balances things out. And it's these two interactions we're going to be looking at. And by the way, before you start saying, oh, well, I don't have those, we do. We all have them, okay? So get that thought out of your mind. We all have a system 1 and a system 2. So, system 1, our intuition. Our intuition is pretty much what some people call our sixth sense. It's quick, it's fast. It's almost like a reflex. It's something that helps you take a really quick decision. It's something that gives you impulses. It sort of it triggers feelings. Danger is one of them, for example. Oh, that's a dangerous situation. So that's system 1. Now, system 1 at work, this one is a particular favourite of mine in the UK. Give me the words that follow. Fish and chips. 2 + 2 is 4. Did we have to think about that? I'm hoping not. Especially the fish and chips coming up to lunchtime, it triggers immediately. You say, right, that's what I'm expecting. But also sort of like difficult things to grasp, like a sense of danger. Does this feel right? Let's take an example. And this is a classic example. A fireman leads his team into a building that's on fire to fight the fire. In the middle of fighting the fire, the team leader says, "Get out of here quick." And they all leave. Shortly afterwards, the building collapses and would have killed all of his team and himself. Now, a great example of intuition, system 1 at work, okay? This guy didn't have the chance to sit down and evaluate things. He just said, this doesn't feel right. So, system 2 now is a more logical thinking type of part of our... yeah, got a question?
In this case, it also comes with a huge amount of experience. And
yes.
The system 1 is
absolutely.
Intuition is actually
right.
And progress by experience.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We'll look at experience and the impact it has shortly. Actually, very good point. Okay, so but let me move on to system 2. But thanks for thinking with me on that. That's great. So system 2, deliberate. We think about things, we weigh things up before we take a decision. Okay, now system 2, and this is important, can overrule your impulsive system 1. Okay, my favourite example here is an unwanted present. This may be a particularly English thing, I'm not quite sure. But just imagine you've been given a present. Maybe it's Christmas time coming up and your favourite auntie has knitted for you a Christmas jumper. Right? And there you are. You've received this present and you unpack the present and if you're a tall guy like me, the jumper usually finishes about there. And, it's got a funny, goofy reindeer on the front. And your system 1 immediately thinks, you must be kidding. You don't say that, but you think that. System 1 triggers it, no, not another one. System 2 says, hang on a minute. This is your favourite auntie. She spent a lot of time doing this. She thinks that you're going to like this. You'll offend her if you say, look, I don't like your stupid jumper. So what happens is system 2 takes over and says, look, your response to this is, oh, how nice. That's maybe an English thing, but you know what I mean? You don't want to offend anybody. That's system 2, balancing out the impulses of system, you like that one, of system 1. Okay, so that's really very, very condensed what the 2 systems are. And it's the interaction of these 2 systems that can give us sources of cognitive bias. And I'll try the best I can in the time I've got to digest it all down so that you've got some examples to go away with. These are my top 5. Trusting our intuition, experiencing tunnel vision, overloading our system. These are all this hasn't got a lot to do with testing, you're saying to yourself. Well, wait and see. It does. Forming incorrect conclusions and filling our knowledge gaps. These are all things that relate to different forms of cognitive bias. So, let's take it from the top. Trusting our intuition. Intuition is good. It's our system 1, remember? Okay? But it depends on your level of experience. Okay, so it can lead to good decisions, can lead to bad decisions. So, faced with a problem, our immediate impulse is to find a quick solution. This is the way we work. The first thing that happens is, can I fix this immediately? Now, let's just think of an example. You maybe have seen this. Any of you play chess here? Maybe 1 or 2, yeah. Do you know, you get these situations where a chess master with a lot of experience goes to an event and there's about 50 people all sitting there playing chess with this one chess master. And the guy is going, or the lady is going up and down and saying, okay, there. Going to the next one, there. Next one, there. Taking each move as they come. Now, that person is thinking very much out of their incredible experience in chess. And that person is using their intuition. They are not standing and evaluating the situation in depth. They're just saying, I've been here before, I know what to do. That's my next move. I go to the next person and so on. So if you have strong experience levels, then the danger of having cognitive bias as a result of this, system 1, is going to be less, okay? You're going to say, that's great, I can use that, I'm making a right decision. However, it's not always that way. The opposite is, if experience is not there, you can end up with something else, and that something else is like a guessing game. It's like, I'm going to try and take a decision with the information that I have, my experience that I have, and I'm going to try and fit together a story that I can live with. Okay, so we have a go at it. We tend to not just say, okay, well, let me sit down and work all this through. We too tend to often build a picture up in our minds as to what to do. We have a go. And this is called substitution. We try and define something that we can answer, okay, instead of actually solving the real question. And substitution is sort of like happening all the time. We're just trying to get to grips with the fact that we don't have perfect information, okay? And so we're trying to fill in those gaps. And we're having a go. And System 1's doing this for us. We don't even know it most of the time. So be aware of that bias coming in. And, here's a bit of, substitution in action. Just imagine that you have to hire somebody. Maybe you're a test manager. Maybe you have to hire somebody. Normally, when you're doing that, you'd be very careful. You have to have a number of factors written down, what you're going to analyze, and you're going to go through things. Now, that's good. That would be a System 2 type of task. But remember, System 1 is always going to jump in first, okay? Always going to try and give you a question that you can answer quickly. Might not be the real question you want answering. So, that would be the list of subjects there. System 1 comes up with a substitute. And the question that System 1 comes up with is, do I like tester A or B? Okay? It's naughty, isn't it? You know, this is what System 1 does to you. Here it comes. And you say, yeah, System B. Yeah, great. He's a Tottenham fan. I love him. You know, he gets the job. Sorry, that's a football joke. If you don't, Tottenham's football team. So this is what happens to us. We're filling in those gaps. So that's not the right decision, is it, necessarily? But you've taken a quick decision. That's the main thing. You've satisfied the impulse of System 1 to come up with something fast. Now, dealing with substitution, well, it's quite tricky, but, you know, you have to be honest with yourself. So remember, you've got a System 2 that can correct these nasty impulses from System 1, okay? Train your System 2 to catch yourself doing this. It's weird in the sense that you have to sort of catch yourself thinking. You with me? It's like, what you're trying to say is, hey, don't be so quick. Take a step back. Give yourself 10 seconds. You know, some of these tricks. Don't be impulsive. And that will help you avoid the bias that comes into your decision making. Okay? And it's a little bit like this. You know, I guess you've seen these kinds of things, haven't you? You get asked the question, which horizontal line at the bottom there, in those two figures, is the longest? It's a classic children's sort of game. And immediately, small children would say, oh, of course it's the bottom one. It's an optical illusion, guys. So as you get older, for things like that, you see that you get the question asked, which is longer, and you say, you, System 1, you're not going to catch me this time. I know it's a trick. They're both the same. And that's the kind of thing that you need to practice doing. Practice catching yourself out doing the wrong thing, i.e. having a biased result. So encourage you to do that. So let's have a look at another source, experiencing tunnel vision. When we are actually really, really focused, we're in the zone, right? We are really focusing hard on a particular subject. This is System 2 at its best. It's saying, right, I'm going to concentrate, I'm going to analyze, I'm going to take my time maybe. But it's really, really demanding on your System 2 to do that. What happens is that System 2 blocks off everything except the very task that you need to focus on. Okay? So it says, ignore all of this stuff around you. That's your job. Focus hard on it. Okay? Now, I bet you can guess what happens. You know, the act of blocking out results in what we sometimes call tunnel vision. If you want to impress somebody with a new term, when you go back to the office and tell them what you learned here, you can say, I learned about inattentional blindness. Okay? That'll impress them. Find out, Google it first, right? But, you know, That's what you heard. But that's what it is. You don't mean to do this. You're not actually consciously cutting things up. It's just the way you go. An example, and some people have seen this already, is a famous gorilla experiment. Anybody heard of it? No. Okay, great. Sometimes I've given this speech once or twice before, and some people say, "Oh, well, I heard that one before," But good. Here we are. This is an experiment. A whole group of people were asked to look at a basketball match between a blue team and a red team. Some people were given the task to monitor how many passes were made by the Blues, some people for the Reds. Doesn't matter. Roll the tape. Right, those people are sitting there concentrating all the time and saying, "Oh, pass came to blue. Better watch out. What do I always give it to blue? No, it's gone back to red." They've got to count these up, right? That is demanding. They're getting tunnel vision, those people. Now, what happens halfway through is a gorilla walks onto the basketball court and starts dancing around. It's not a real gorilla, okay? It's a guy in a gorilla suit. Anyway, sort of makes himself really obvious. And afterwards, people give their results in. I saw blue team score 59 points, and I score red team 25, and all this kind of stuff. Got the stats together. And the next question is, oh, by the way, who saw the gorilla? 50% of the people didn't see the gorilla, okay, that walked onto the basketball court and started dancing around and, doing cartwheels and things. They didn't see it. It's because their system 2 was so much in the zone that they blanked off everything else. Now, how important is that for software testing to know that? Just imagine that you're being given an intensive task to do, maybe to test a really important part of your system. You really, it may be high risk, it may be a new feature, it may be safety critical. You are focusing really hard on what you're doing. But you're not looking outside. So any kind of defects that are outside of the area you're looking, you're not going to see them. How bad is that for testing? It's terrible. If you're focusing on finding defects, you are not going to find all those defects because you've not been looking. So that's a really major source of cognitive bias that impacts our testing. So, basically we become blind to our blindness depending on how bad the tunnel is. The more we focus our attention on a particular aspect, the less likely we are to recognize unexpected things. I think it was at this stage in the book where I started to say, started to write the word testing in big letters next to it, So that's a source of bias. So better get on with it. There's more to come. So impact on testing, you're not going to find everything, okay? Be careful about the kind of tasks you're giving people. If you're asking them to actually focus on only one thing, that's okay, but don't expect them to find all the defects. They're just looking at one thing. So that might be a kind of a management job to say, look, ignore those gorillas effectively, all right? So reducing the impact, what can we do? Well, pair testing. Test together with people. It's a recognized way of avoiding cognitive bias. Most people do it actually so that, one person is maybe given a bit of tuition by a senior person and all this kind of good stuff. But actually pair testing is perfect for avoiding this cognitive bias, because the second person might say, hey, what's that gorilla doing? And they'll see these things as a pair more easily. And learn to look for the unexpected. It's kind of a challenging thing to do, but if you know that you could be subject to tunnel vision, occasionally step back. Occasionally say, look, I'm in the zone, but now I'm just going to have a little bit of a scan around and see what's going on. Train yourself to do this. Mix your techniques. ISTQB tells you to mix static with dynamic and different techniques for black box testing, all this kind of stuff. Great. Make sure that you mix things so that you don't become tunnel visioned on a particular technique or a particular way of working. So there we are. Number 3 in the hit parade is overloading our system. Okay, so overloading our system is when we are basically giving people too much to do. Okay, our system 2 is what's doing a lot of work. System 1 is our intuition and it's all good, but it's the system 2 that you're employing to do the work, okay, evaluating things. Now, system 2 is rather like a computer, in the sense that it's got some working memory to work with, okay? And you can exhaust that working memory by giving people too many jobs at the same time, too many jobs in parallel, too many jobs in total, just switching their context all the time. Oh, I've got something for you. 5 minutes late, I've got something else for you. Oh, can you go to this meeting now? You're driving people crazy with all these context switches, okay? And that will exhaust our system 2's ability to actually evaluate and make the right decisions. So people perform badly if their system 2 is in overload, rather like this poor guy here. What they tend to do is they say, okay, looks good to me. Yeah, another one, that'll do. Yeah, tick. They're not doing the job. What they're doing is saying, I'm absolutely exhausted. I can't go on now. I'm taking default decisions all the time. Your system 1 starts to creep in and says, don't worry. I've got the perfect solution for you. All right? That's where cognitive bias will come in. And it can result in, not the results that you're looking for. So avoiding that, well, recognize that if you're giving people tasks, don't overload them. Don't interrupt them all the time. Make sure that you're not doing too many things in parallel. Time boxing is not good. It's putting people under pressure. It's, high amounts of collaboration. I hate to say it, guys. This is the bad news. Agile encourages this kind of thing. It's a way of working that does actually have a lot of highly collaborative activities, lots of parallel things going on, lots of time boxing, lots of high pressure stuff. And, basically, to use the word sprint in a different context, you can't sprint indefinitely, okay? Even the fastest runner in the world is slower running 200 meters than 100 meters. So the first, if you think of a 100-meter sprinter, maybe they'll do it in, what's the record? 9 seconds, something like that. What's the record for 200 meters? It's not 9 seconds times 2, is it? It's a bit longer. And that's the kind of thing that we find happening in Agile. People are just, with the whole way of working, if you're not careful, you can enter this kind of overload situation. And remember, in overload, we're starting to take default decisions, we're starting to not take care, and our system one is creeping in and saying, right, I can answer that one for you, it's that. Probably wrong. It's a bias. So, forming incorrect solutions. Forming incorrect solutions. Here's a quick one for you. A bat and a ball costs €1.10. The bat costs €1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Right. A lot of people will look at that and immediately say, and their system 2 is saying, oh, that's a tricky one. Oh, I have to think about that. System 1 is saying, come on, guys, easy, come on, it costs €1, come on. And it's wrong. You know, the answer is, the bat is €1.05, the ball is 5 cents. Okay? It needed a bit of thinking, didn't it? Okay? So, forming incorrect conclusions. So, very often, and this is an unfortunate thing, I mean, if you look at this book that I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of experimental work going on, a lot of really interesting stuff. And they come to some conclusions that are quite surprising. But this one at the bottom here is sort of like a bit alarming. Experiments have shown that when people believe something is true, they will believe anyone else's views which support that view. Ooh. So it's like, I think what he thinks or she thinks, you know, because he or she thinks the way I do. Oh dear. Okay, so that's a source of bias. Right, forming conclusions, some observations. System 1 will always jump to conclusions. Be with you in a moment. So, is this a London bus? Who thinks that's a London bus? Who thinks it's not a London bus? How many people have I completely overloaded? Oh, quite a lot probably. This is not necessarily a London bus, but many people will see it as such because it's red and it's a double-decker. But it ain't a London bus, not the ones that I know. It doesn't, for a start, say London Transport on it. It doesn't have a number on it to say it's going to King's Cross Station or whatever. Okay? So, last one. Do I have the last one? Okay. Filling the knowledge gaps. Remember that our good old System 1 is always filling in for you, always giving you a comfort zone feeling. I can answer this question. I can deal with this problem. Okay, so just imagine you're given the job of choosing a new treasurer for your society, and you hear words about that person that are like intelligent, good with numbers, and you immediately think, yeah, that'll do nicely. You don't look further and dig further because maybe you would hear that Ronnie, in this case, is corrupt and occasionally tells lies. Ooh, not good for her. You know, so our System 1 is always filling in gaps for us, making us feel comfortable. Okay? How do we manage this? Well, it's sort of like we have an effect that's called what you see is all there is. Okay? This is the way we perceive things. What I see, that's it. These requirements here, that's all there is to know about this system, and I'm happy with that. So what you see is all there is gives us that comfort feeling. You know, System 1 is always going to be saying, right, I'll give you a plausible answer to this. System 2, load balancing away and just trying to do what it can. And the result is you get a major source of bias. The bias is because you've not had perfect information coming in. You've tried to understand that imperfect information. Your way of thinking has led to a source of bias. It's given you a nice way to work with that imperfect information, but it's resulted in a biased result. Right, major source of bias. Results very often in overconfidence. You know, you feel good about your ability to decide. Overconfidence. You know, it's really bad, especially for test managers. Will you be ready soon? Oh yeah, I'm pretty much certain. No, you're not. You're just saying that because you feel comfortable about saying that. Okay. Going a bit fast, sorry. Okay, impacts on testing. How often, I ask myself, do we have to work in the testing area, whether we're managers or testers? How often do we have to deal with imperfect information? Well, think of those requirements. Think of those risks. Think of those estimates that you're making. All these things. You're having to work these things out, and you're building up a picture, okay, of what that means and filling in the gaps. It's like Assistant 1 going along with a knife to fill up the cracks. Do you know what I mean? Fill things up, make it look nice, but it's just plastering over the problem. Right, that was it. I've overloaded you something there, I think, but just take my advice. If you're interested in this, go and have a look at this book. It's really entertaining. It's not at all scientific, even though it is written by a professor. And you might well draw to the same conclusions as I do, and that is that the cognitive bias impacts not just our daily lives and our professional lives, but in particular, software testing. So it's subtle. Its impact is relevant. So my recommendation, please don't shut your eyes to it. Read more about this, and you'll find especially a description of some of the experiments and really interesting stuff. It's a great read. That was it. Thank you very much for listening.